Welcome to In the Ven Zone with Christine McKay, where we get candid about what it takes to negotiate effectively. You'll learn from the challenges and successes of entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. We help you change the nature of your negotiations and get more from every deal you do.
All right, welcome everybody. So glad to have you join us again for yet another episode of In the Ven Zone, where we provide information, tools, techniques, stories to help you as entrepreneurs and small business owners elevate your business, level the playing field in your negotiation, and just be overall a lot more successful than you ever thought you could be. And today I am super excited, and I know I'm always super excited because that's just kind of who I am. So it is early in the morning here in Los Angeles, and I am honored, and it's awesome to have with me LV Randolph. And LV and I had an amazing conversation a few weeks ago, and I'm really excited about having him on the show, and you will quickly find out why. So LV is using his 20 plus years of experience and skill set for innovation and starting companies to actually help guide other entrepreneurs. He is passionate about identifying business opportunities, and his lifelong mission of doing well while doing good espouses his commitment to the conscious capitalist movement. Oh my God, I love that. In 2018, Cambridge Argillite's business development division merged to form the Roxbury Business Development Group, and RBDG is committed to providing practical, impactful business solutions for early stage entrepreneurs and small businesses of color looking to start and scale their operations to provide clients with expert assistance while funding their capital requirements and providing resources vital to their growth and sustainability. LV has been involved in a lot of different projects, from rentcambridge.com to Pale Real Estate, Gray Management, Trans Metro Media, which there's an interesting story there, Startup Lab Alston, and he actually just very recently joined the team of Tintagel. And so, LV, I am so excited to have you. Thank you for being here with us this morning. This is great. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Christine. It's an honor for me. I really enjoyed our initial conversation. It was very enlightening and insightful. I actually learned a lot from you during that conversation, and I look forward to this conversation.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. Well, the first question I always ask is, so I read your bio, and bios they're just not fully descriptive. So tell us how you got to where you're at today. Tell us more about you, what you do, fill in the blanks for the audience.
Well, so, I guess I would describe myself as an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was in college. I sort of failed a plan one year. I was supposed to go out and get a job for the summer, and I was too busy hanging out with my girlfriend at the time, and I just didn't do what I was supposed to do. So I ended up in Harvard Square. I was walking past this little basement office, and they had a help wanted sign in the window. Do you remember when people used to do that? When there was no social media, everything wasn't digital. Like, they would just put a sign in the window. So I saw the sign. I said, I'm just going to go for it. I was very afraid of really having to tell my parents that I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So I went in. I met with a gentleman. I convinced him to give me a job. Now, it turned out that this was a real estate office, and it was called Channing Real Estate. And Bill and Catherine were the owners of that company, or are the owners of that company, and they've been in business for a number of years. And I could have sort of bounded in and said, "Hey, I'd like a job," and I convinced Bill to give me a job. Now, it was a pretty simple thing for him because I would be working on commission, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, why not, kid? Here's a desk. But what was funny is, at the time I had very little practical experience in the real estate industry. I come from a real estate family, but I've really never done anything myself. So that afternoon, I went and I signed up for the state real estate licensure course. I took the course over the course of that weekend. The next Tuesday, I took the test and I passed the test, and I came in and handed him my real estate license, and he said, "Here you go, kid." And within 2 weeks, I had closed my first rental. What really did it for me there was, you know, I'm reminded of something that a mentor told me years ago. He said, "LV, find the thing that you would do and do for free, that you just love doing so much that you do it for free, and the money will come." Right. So what I realized then, after doing that first rental transaction, I was having so much fun that I had forgotten to get the commission check. Now you can imagine when I went back in and I handed Bill my big file, you know, with everything in it, and I said, "Here I am. I've completed my first deal." I had this big smile on my face. I handed him the deal, and he starts going through, and he goes, "There's just one problem here, LV. Well, where's the check?" You know, and he looked up at me and he said, "You know, this is why we do this, right?" So I looked very surprised, and I realized that I had completed the entire deal, and I'd forgotten to get paid. So that was when I realized that this was the thing for me. So as time went on in that job over the summers, I realized that I had been, you know, the rental business is really a numbers game. You have to see a lot of people and rent a lot of apartments to make money. And typically you're getting about the equal a month's rent as your fee. And I had to split that fee with Bill, right? That was, he gets half and I get half. And what I realized was that I was seeing, out of every 5 people that I would see, one of them would choose to rent an apartment with me. So that meant in order for me to make a certain amount of money or to make money doing it, I had to see a lot of people. Right. And most of it was driving people around. Right. This was back in the old days. There was no such thing as rent.com. You couldn't do any of that stuff online. Right. So, you know, people would find us in the newspaper and they would come to the office and we'd sit down with pieces of paper and fill out people's names and fill out forms and all that stuff. And then we drive them all over the city, showing them apartment after apartment after apartment after apartment. I had this crazy idea. There was this thing called the internet that sort of had just popped up, right? It was like, oh, you could go and it was mostly for fun. We would go and say, oh, there's a website here and that's what it does. There's a website here, this is what it does. And there was America Online. Do you remember America Online?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was how we got on. You'd put this disc inside of your computer or you know, inside of a slot, and then the modem would kick on and you'd hear it dialing in and making all kinds of noise. And that's how you got on the internet.
And it was slow and painful.
Exactly. So what I realized was that if I could, people were going through this process where they would effectively, they would have to come to the town that they're moving to. Right. And if you know Boston and Cambridge, there's a lot of students. So a lot of people would come in to go to school. Right. And that was primarily my market. So they would fly in, they'd go get a Boston Globe or a Boston Herald, flip to the want ad section, and then go through, and these little tiny, I mean, they were about this big, and they would get the phone number and they'd call the phone number, and you'd see apartment after apartment. You wouldn't know where you are. You'd have no information about the neighborhoods or the areas or anything like that. You kind of have to learn on the fly. Yeah. So what I realized is if I take this information and I put it on the internet, then people would know, they'd have more information before they got here, And I would be able to introduce myself before they came.
Right.
So when they came, they'd be expecting to see me. They'd have all the information about the apartments that I wanted to rent. And what I understood was that I could increase that 1 out of 5 to maybe 3 out of 5. So that was my goal was to get more rentals for myself. I had no idea the box that I was opening up. So I took that, I went out and I got a digital camera. It was a 1 megapixel camera by Kodak. Do you remember that company, Kodak?
Hey, they're still around. They're just not very big anymore.
They still make stuff. So it was a 1 megapixel camera that I got from Staples, and Staples was a new company. It was relatively new at that time, and so I got that camera and I started taking pictures of the apartments and taking the descriptions, and I built a website and I put the information up there. And the rest is history. That was rentcambridge.com. So that was my first company. I ran that company for a couple of years during college and then after college. And the .com, it was the sort of the .com bust happened, right? Yep. So nobody was really the investors. People weren't investing in it. There were plenty of people that had great ideas that were online that one day they were millionaires, the next day they were paupers. Oh yeah. It was sort of a tough time, right?
NASDAQ from 2000 to the end of 2002 lost 80% of its value.
Right. So those were very tough times, right? And also 9/11 happened, right? That was sort of a thing that happened in between that, right? So that affected a lot, right? Yeah. Particularly in Boston. So I realized that I was not going to be able to carry that business because most of the business was in the summertime. We'd make a lot of money, that first summer, or the many of those summers I was making $60,000-$75,000 in 4 months, right? Because we were constantly
right. Yeah. So for the audience, just so the audience knows, Boston has more than 100 universities and colleges in the metropolitan area, and literally, I kid you not, it doubles in size from the point of when it has no students to when the students arrive. So pre-COVID times, the rental market in Boston is a very unique market, or that would drive my husband. And my husband's like, unique always means very. There, you don't need to add the very to unique. So whenever I say that, I always catch myself. But it is a unique market in that respect because it has so many universities. So.
Yeah. So, and many of my customers were Harvard Business School students, Harvard Kennedy schools, because there was no housing. Now they have plenty of these big shining towers.
Oh yeah.
But now they didn't.
I went there.
They had nowhere to go. So you kind of show up and then there would be me, right? Okay. Right. I'm going to show you to your apartment right this way. Yeah, so that was a pretty tough time. I recognized that it was going to be tough for me to really get to keep that business going because I had to carry it through the winter. And I went around looking for new investment, and in fact, I found a company that they said, "Oh, this is really great. We were about to spend millions of dollars to try to build this out. We recognized the opportunity of the internet," and they ended up purchasing my company. Go figure.
Yay.
Now, I have to tell you, in full disclosure, this was all dumb luck. I was just a kid. I had no idea what I was doing. I was winging it the whole time, right? So that I found to be a welcome blessing. It wasn't the big windfall that I thought would happen, but it was the saving grace. That company, what was funny really about that, and this really speaks to negotiation, because I didn't really understand what I had. I didn't understand the value of what I had created. And my focus was not on exiting the company, it was saving the company, right? So I didn't understand the value, and I didn't understand the marketplace the people who I was talking to, and I didn't understand how the market was moving. I was just trying to save my bacon, right?
Right.
So the company that ended up purchasing me, immediately after, probably about 2 months after, was purchased by a much larger national company that owns, apartment communities and commercial buildings from coast to coast. The reason why that smaller regional company was purchased was because of the technology and the methodology that I had provided, that they had purchased from me.
Right.
So I ended up getting this much, and the company that purchased the company ended up getting that much, and then the company that purchased that company ended up getting this much, right? From making money off the technology.
Right.
So that was my first sort of foray into that. Now, fast forward, since then, I've created 9 companies. I've created, run, and exited 9 companies since then. And now I run a business development consultancy. I have a transportation company and a consumer electronics company. And I work with various, we work with companies that want to hire us for business development. We work with individuals. We have projects in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, in New York. And we have other, we have a course that we're just about to launch, where we're going to start to work with people who want to take their idea and get those ideas off the ground. And we're going to help them with the business planning, with resources, and then also with the funding. So be on the lookout for that. That's launching. I think the 17th is the date that we're launching.
Oh, that's awesome. So just next week. Oh, that's fantastic.
Just next week. That's right.
That's great. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that. Later in the program, I'm going to have you give information so people can go and find that, and find you on all your social and your website and stuff. I saw that program. I went to your website and saw that program. And there's a few things that you've raised that you've mentioned right so far that I think are really important to kind of flesh out and to talk a little bit more about. And one of the things, and my background, and a lot of the listeners do, but certainly not everybody. So I have a very long history in mergers, acquisitions, and divestitures. So I worked in corporate development for many, many years. And so that's kind of, that was where I cut my teeth in negotiation, actually, was in that world. And one of the things that I see a lot with small businesses is that they do not plan adequately enough for an exit. And the reason why that's important is because your exit strategy should be informing and influencing every negotiation that you do. It should drive your negotiation strategy. If your objective is to pass your business on to somebody in your family, that drives a certain types of behavior, certain types of language, certain types of protections that you want in your relationships. If you're going to sell, if your objective is to exit through a sale to a larger organization, that drives a certain type of contract strategy, negotiation strategy. If you're going to go public, that drives something else. So talk a little bit about, because you do so much work with businesses and you've exited a number of businesses. Talk more about the importance of understanding what your exit is and how that has informed your negotiation strategies as you've gotten more experience and have seen that correlation more clearly.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. I'm big on business planning. One of the things that I learned from sort of the Rent Cambridge days and the Pale management days and those things is planning is key, right? That's one thing that you can control. When you decide to start a business, the first thing that the world hands you is a 90% chance to fail, right? And if you do your job right, if you're really, really, really diligent and you go through the planning process, you might be able to reduce that down to maybe about 60%. You know, the best of us, probably about 50%, right? So planning is key. When I talk to my clients and when I deal with mentees and others, the probably the second thing after the planning process that I talk to them about is, what do you want from this business, right? And from the what you want. Now we always talk about what's the why, right? But what's the want is the beginning and conversation to that exit, right? Because if you want, you just described, if you want to run this business and you want it to be something that's a legacy and you pass down to your kids, you know, or something like that, that's important to understand, because you have to understand what you're going to do, how you're going to build the company and set it up so that it will last that long. So it's sustainable over generations of time, right? And that directly goes into the planning. Your exit strategy has to be actually one of those things, in my opinion, that you talk about and that you think about in the beginning. Before you do anything, you have to be thinking about your exit, right? That speaks directly to the what do you want, right? If what you want is to make a lot of money and you're building a technology business that is in the social media space, right? You've got to understand that there are 3 or 4 major players in that space. And they have, and we've seen this in the news recently, they have a very interesting strategy about how they stay the biggest players. They either buy you or they compete against you, right? So you've got to understand that first. And that might tell you exactly what your exit's going to be. So if you want to make a ton of money, then you know who your customer is. Before you start your business, you know, I'm selling this, I'm building this tech play, it's going to be oriented towards social media, and I know that the company I'm selling to is Facebook. Right? So what you can do is you can plan out exactly how you build the business, where your benchmarks are in terms of where you need to be in terms of revenue, and take a look at what Facebook is buying at the time. Right? Look at what they're buying, what they're paying, and how that's going. Where, at what point is that business being positioned for sale? At what point is Facebook looking at that business, right? And then you plan it out and you develop your business plan and you plan out your strategy to get you to that point. And then you present yourself, right? You put on your tuxedo, you put on your ball gown, and you're ready to go. Right. That so I would say that looking at exit has to be something you do in the beginning during the planning process, right? And you've got to understand who your customer might be, what industry you're going to be in, and at what point do you want to sell, right?
Yeah, and right now, right, it's really interesting because just this week, and of course this episode will be aired later, but this week, right? I think it's 45 attorneys general and the FCC filed antitrust lawsuit against Facebook, and they're looking to break it up, separate out Instagram, right? It's like they want to carve that out. It like reminds me, now I'm showing my age, because I remember when they carved up
Ma Bell.
Ma Bell. I remember that. I worked for a Bell. I worked for a Baby Bell. So they carved up Ma Bell, which was AT&T, and then they created Baby Bells, and then that's all changed. So it's very similar, and and so for companies who are, and you touched on it without saying exactly these words, but in terms of developing your exit strategy, one of the things that you really have to think about is you have to look to, and you did say this, look to the market, but you have to look to the market very broadly in terms of who are all the players and what is the probability of Facebook getting carved up, right? And how does that affect your exit strategy? If your exit strategy is to try to position a sale to Facebook, And Facebook is now in this antitrust garbage, right? That's going to
Right.
be painful for them. It's going to be painful and expensive, even though their stock price didn't go through the toilet yesterday, which was
Not at
it
all.
didn't at all. It was stunning, right? But yeah, when you're thinking about exit strategy, you got to think not just about, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but no, from a negotiation perspective, because there's, for example, in your contracts, especially in the tech space, right? You have language in the back of the contract and the general terms and conditions around assignment, and your ability to assign a contract to an acquirer is stated in that clause. And very large companies, so if you're a business who has larger companies, they don't allow you to assign. So let's say you're a tech company who has Verizon. I'll pick on them because I used to work for them and have negotiated with them a lot. So if Verizon has language that doesn't allow you to assign the contract. Well, if you're trying to sell to Facebook, that contract relationship that you have with Verizon is one of the reasons why they're buying you, right? Because there's value in there. And so you have to pay attention to that. And this is why that exit, having that view of your exit is so important, because it does have a direct impact on how you negotiate your relationships today.
It does. And one of the, I think for me, the most notable exits, when it first came to view, the idea that there was such a thing, right? And for me, this is sort of how I learned over time, was, I believe it was YouTube. And I couldn't believe that these guys had created this. I mean, we use it now. We have no thought, but the idea that you could video yourself. I mean, you remember the camcorders that were like,
oh yeah,
this, and you have to put them on your shoulder, and the batteries,
yep.
and all that stuff, or you were walking around like this with these
VCRs,
big, huge things. Now we have just, phones that do that work. But it was a very simple idea. And I remember it was a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. And these were just two kids negotiating out of their dorm room, right? So how did they do that? What was, and these are the questions that I asked myself. What was it that they did? How did they know what to do? When I entered into the agreement with the company that purchased Rank Cambridge, I had no idea. I was just happy that they were even paying attention to me. Right? I was literally, they could have given me 10 grand and I would have been happy. Now it's just so turned out that they offered me more before that, but I did not know what to ask for. I didn't know what to need, and I didn't negotiate at all. I just didn't. And it's because I didn't know. So one thing you can do, obviously, is you can go to a subject matter expert who knows, right? Like Christine, and vend negotiation. Or, I mean, you can understand the value of your company, right? So valuation, I guess, is where you have to start. You have to understand, how do I value this company? At this moment in time, what is this asset worth? Right? And how do I get there? Is it the number of contracts? Is it the amount of revenue that I have? What is it that's going to help me to understand what the value of this is? And then I would say you go to the marketplace and you look at yourself competitively, right? Where am I? If I'm selling pizza, how much pizza am I selling? How many pizza stores do I have? What is my market share for pizza? What is my competition? What do they sell? How many slices of pizza did they sell? That will also tell you what your valuation is, right? It tells you how valuable you are to that larger player, or even to a smaller player that's trying to expand, right? So those are the things that I think you have to pay attention to. But you've got to have the presence of mind to know that those are the things you have to pay attention to. And that is where I believe the planning process begins, the business planning process. It helps you to become not just the subject matter expert of your business, but it helps you to understand how that all fits in with the market and the marketplace that you're in.
I like that, because a lot of times, especially for smaller business owners, you know, I see a lot of them and talk to lots of them, and they fall in love with their business idea. And so the word that you used
Guilty.
was to look at yourself as an asset. What's the asset, right? Which implies a level of dispassionate kind of detachment to a certain extent, to say, what's this asset worth when somebody has, blood, sweat, and tears drained their 401k, maybe gone through a breakup, maybe, just
Yeah.
sacrifice everything. And then you're sitting there and they're saying, LV, what the hell do you mean? You want me to see my business, my baby, as an asset? What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
So tell me about, because you work with entrepreneurs to help them kind
Sure.
of think through these things. What are some of the things? And I always say that the hardest negotiation is the negotiation that happens between our ears. And
Mhm.
so how do you advise your clients in those situations? How do you get them to move from, this is the baby that I birthed and it took me this long to birth it, to this is an asset and this is what it's worth. This is what it's
Right.
worth.
Right. And that's tough because, with my first business, I was absolutely in love with that business. And it took, for me, it took the market changing in a way that I had no control. It took me facing not having any revenue, not really being able to keep the business afloat, and sort of facing this event, right, where there was nothing that I could do to keep going. Even though I was trying to keep going, everything, it was like sort of like shoveling sand against the waves, coming. It just was no way to keep it going. It took that to sort of jar my mind, to shake me up, right? And what I learned from that is this: the business really is you. This is the business. Right? It's not what you created and how it's working in the marketplace, because you have ideas every day, right? If you're in entrepreneurs, we're constantly thinking about different business ideas. I can't go anywhere and see something or see a problem without thinking about what kind of a business I could create with that, right? So you are really the business. So that's the first thing that I advise my clients. It's you who's the business. The business is here. The business is here. Right. The business is here.
Yeah. So
Right.
for the audience, it's in your heart, it's in your head, it's in the muscle and the effort that you put into it.
Exactly. So that's the first thing. I think also I came to the realization that no matter how much I love this business, it's not going to love me back. Right. It's simply not going to love me back. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to provide what it's going to provide. And I'm the driver of that all the time. Right. So you can love your business. You can love the concept. You can love your customers. Your customers might love you back. But if you can't provide the service or the product that they're coming to you for, well, they're going to go find it somewhere else. Right. So, it's tough to do. And I think that to a certain extent, you have to understand the difference between passion for your business and love of that business. And the passion is what drives, the passion is what gets you through. The love kind of doesn't really, it's not going to get you there. So first and foremost, you have to understand that it's you that's the driver. You're the person, you're the entrepreneur, you're the thing that makes it happen. This is just an idea. You're going to have another idea. If you're lucky, that idea will be just as successful as the first idea. The second is the business is not going to love you back. It will provide for you, but you have to feed it and you have to work it and you have to make that a priority, and you have to apply passion, but it's not going to love you back, right? So looking at how one would really address, especially in a startup, how you navigate moving towards understanding that it's an asset is really going to be predicated on those things. Planning also helps, right?
Mhm.
And understanding that exit strategy, understanding what you're doing, your mission, what you want to, how you want to do it, where you want this business to go for yourself, understanding your what, not just your how, your why, but your what is also something that I think that I would advise clients to do. You know, I'm reminded of a recent conversation that I had with an entrepreneur, and this young man is brilliant. He's an engineer by trade. He really has a lot of potential there. But he was sort of stuck in this idea that he had been presented an opportunity for him to own a business. And that business deal was being offered by somebody who was much more experienced, had been in business for 40 years. The gentleman was in his 70s and so on. And that person saw himself giving an opportunity to this young entrepreneur to get into business, right? But he was still a businessman. And the way that the deal was structured was such that it would be very, very difficult to maintain, and it required a lot of capital to do. Now, this particular entrepreneur was more focused on the opportunity. And he loved the idea that he had the opportunity, that he wasn't looking closely at the contracts. He was not looking closely at the deal. And when he came to me, he said, I just need this little bit of money. If I could just get, $20,000, I can get into this business and I'll make it work. And it's going to be great. So we sat down and we took a look. And lo and behold, as we started to go through the contract and we started to look at the deal itself and what he was getting, what we discovered was $20,000 was not nearly enough for this business at all. Not nearly enough. And we also discovered that he was an exit strategy. He was the other guy's exit strategy, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It turned out that really what he needed was $2 million. In order to make that business work, he was going to need $2 million, right?
Wow,
so
there's
again,
an order of magnitude difference.
It is absolutely. And he what he wasn't seeing, he was seeing the opportunity. The opportunity was in front of him, and he was seeing that, and he was in love with the opportunity. But he wasn't looking at the business as an asset. He wasn't looking at it as an asset. He wasn't looking at the process that he would have to go through in order to acquire the business, in order to establish an operational acuity with that particular business, getting to revenue and making the business work over time. He just wasn't focused on that. What we were able to do, however, was we sat him down, we took a look at the contracts, and we set up a strategy for him to be able to purchase that business, to be able to move through and get that business up and running, and in partnership with the previous owner. So, and by creating a win-win situation for everybody, right? He didn't have the $2 million. There was no way that was going to happen. And given his experience level, it'd be very, very difficult for him to convince an investor to put up that money without a solid team. So we brought together a solid team with differing skill sets that were germane to that particular business. We went to the owner. We said, we will meet your terms, but we need to renegotiate how we're going to do that. And then we set it up so that the owner got his exit, got the exit that he wanted, and that the buyer, the young entrepreneur, got a solid chance to be able to get that business up and running, and using the capital that he had available to him. So sometimes it helps to have expert help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As we know. Bringing in expert help, and that's something that we do at Cambridge Argillite. And in Venn negotiation, of course, I'm certain that that's something that you could handle easily. It helps to have expert help, but it also helps the planning process. Had that entrepreneur sat down and simply wrote out a business plan instead of looking at just the opportunity, saying, what is this opportunity, and wrote out a business plan, Many of those things they would have discovered along the way. He would have discovered exactly what he should be doing, what the opportunity actually means, and would help him to frame it and frame his emotions, instead of him thinking of this as something and falling in love with the opportunity. He would have been able to see it as an asset.
I love that. That's a great story, and it illustrates just so many different things that I see as well when I'm working with small businesses. And I love that. I love the language that you use around, don't don't be in love with your business. Your business is not going to love you
Not
back.
gonna love you back.
Right. In fact, not only will it not love you back, let's be honest, in many cases, it's going to chew you up and spit you out sometimes, and you just keep standing up and going back at it. But no, I think that's a great story. And I think, people like I do a lot of what I affectionately call David and Goliath negotiations. So I enjoy those. So a lot of technology and just lots of big company, small company things. And people get so enamored with oh my God, I'm going to get this marquee account. And then that marquee account ends up like changing the trajectory of the business in a bad way. It changes their strategy. That impacts their ability to get other customers. It adds operating cost. So one of the big things that I see that entrepreneurs and small businesses do all the time, it's revenue, 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 revenue. And I'm like, it should be profit, 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 right? If you enter into a relationship and it's not profitable, then what the heck are you doing it for? Right. Right. Revenue isn't enough. You've got to make sure. And a lot of large companies have requirements in their contracts and their relationships that add cost to small business. And so like they change how you do things, from package a product to how you invoice them to what their payment terms are. I mean, there's just like how you do, how you hire employees can be impacted operationally from some of these relationships. And so companies, small businesses don't think about those things adding cost. And so because they don't think about those things adding costs, they don't recover that cost.
Sure.
And it really puts them in a negative position. I was
along those lines, I'm reminded of another company that I started, Transmetro Media. We had this crazy idea that we could reposition public transportation payment system assets, right? The Charlie cards and the Charlie tickets and all the, particularly in Boston, we call them Charlie cards. But they're those little cards that you tap as you're going through the turnstile, and we figured we could reposition that. And I remember I understood that this business had a huge scale, right? We had inherent customers, millions of people take the T all the time, the MBTA here in Boston. And we knew that all of those people were going to be our customers instantly, right? By engaging, by getting this contract and working with the MBTA. And I remember understanding that it would scale quickly, and the challenge of what we would need to do to meet that challenge of that scale. Right. And I believe that we had all the plans laid out. And I said, if I could just get some good accounts, right? If I could go out and get some advertisers, and I can get these folks to sort of buy in and those folks to buy in and win these accounts, then I'll be good, right? I'll have this business, we'll have the revenue, we'll have the customers, that's all we need. Well, I remember having a conversation with a woman who I also consider to be a mentor. Her name was Margaret Van Goulden, and she's a marketing executive. At the time, she's marketing executive. I believe she still is a marketing executive, but she was a marketing executive for a large telecommunications company in a very, very large market. And the lesson that I learned, I went to her and I said, look, I've got this golden ticket. Look at this thing. We've got inherent customer. We have unlimited growth. Look at what we can do with this. It's going to be incredible. I want to do business with your company. And she sat me down, much like this other entrepreneur. She sat me down and said, okay, why don't you explain this to me? And, she sort of leaned in,
Yeah.
And I started explaining. I went through my pitch, and she said to me, this is a great idea, LV. I think it would work, but I just don't think we're the right customer for you. What do you mean? I mean, you didn't like my pitch? Was there something I said? Was it, maybe I can I show you? Hold on, let me bring up this spreadsheet. Let me show you the numbers. I said, no, that's not it. She said, look, we are in one of the largest, for our business, we're in one of the largest markets in the country. Mm-hmm. We have 10 billion subscribers. It wasn't 10 billion, but it was a lot, right?
It's a lot.
Right. And I didn't understand what she was getting at, right? And then she quietly kind of said to me, well, what would happen if we placed an order with your company today? When could you fulfill that order, right? Let's say that we place an order for 10 million units. How long would it take you to get me 10 million units? I said, well, wait a minute, I've got one right here. And let's see, we take a look at the machines that we have and all of the other things and the capacity of those machines. And what I realized was that by going after that business and winning the account, had she not stopped me, I would have killed the business overnight.
Yep.
I would have killed the business because we wouldn't have had the capacity to be able to handle the business that came our way. And we would have tried to fulfill the order. It wouldn't have worked. Not fulfilling the order, having contracts, I guess, as you know, not fulfilling that order, there could be landmines in those contracts. That means that we have to give the money back, or we actually owe them, right? The cost of marketing and all those other things. So I just wanted to also touch on that, right? When you're talking about the business planning process, when you're thinking about negotiation and you're thinking about strategy, you're looking at the contracts and things like that, sometimes growing too fast is not what you want to do. And just because you can go out and win that account doesn't mean that's the account you should have, right?
Absolutely.
Because it will kill your business overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is with these big accounts is that, like, if let's say you're in technology, I mean, a big account like a Verizon and AT&T, a British Telecom, any of the telcos, any of the major telcos, or a Juniper, a Cisco, like any of these big companies, they'll take control of your roadmap. They will drive your strategy. They will force you to move things that you had planned to implement and release 2 years from now. And that has implications. And if you don't evaluate that and think about that in your negotiation and protect yourself from that, so that you're protecting the rest of your clients and you're protecting the vision that you have for your organization, then they'll eat you alive. And and trust me, their switching cost isn't that high most times. They can switch, that's what they do. They're behemoths. They can switch. And so, it's not that, I don't think either of us are saying don't do business with big companies, but do it carefully. Know exactly what you want out of that relationship, exactly what it's going to cost you to service that relationship, and exactly how you're going to manage it, because they do. And if you don't,
they do.
And if you haven't thought about that, then you will get eaten alive.
And they have, they've got really smart people. They have armies of smart people who do that all day. That's what they think about. That's what they do, right? So also don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yes.
Right? Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to seek out subject matter experts in your market, right? Don't be afraid to, contact Christine at Venn Negotiation. Don't be afraid to contact LV at Cambridge Argillite and just ask, hey, I have this opportunity, right? What do you think? Right? That can save you a lot. I'm big on mentorship. I always advise my clients, do you have a mentor? Is there someone who has this kind of experience, has gone through this before, that you can seek advice from, that, you know, maybe they may not charge you for, right? And their interest in you is really, they just want to see you succeed, right? Seek out those kinds of people. You know, you may not be able to get all of their time, but it's absolutely going to be critical for you in terms of your business development, because again, the one thing that we all get, every single one of us, me, Christine, everyone, when you want to go out and you want to start a business, the first thing that the world hands you is a 90% chance to fail, right? And if you're really, really, really good, you might be able to get that down to 60 or 50%, right? So you need all the help you can get. You don't have to go it alone. And there's people out there that are willing to help you, people that are willing to help you when it's critical, and you should be prepared to negotiate with those people and pay them, right? Because that's what they do for a living and they're good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, you should be looking for those people in your community who have that experience. You should be going to organizations like E4All, right? That will help you. They help guide you through that process, and they give you mentors, and that helps you move through the process of getting your business started, or even the process of negotiating the marketplace, right? Look for those subject matter experts and those people who want to see you succeed.
I thank you for saying that. I think that's so important. I mean, I'd also add, you know, get involved in a really good mastermind where where you're with a group of people and you're all working to elevate each other's businesses. And the ideas that can come out of it are incredible. And I know for me, my business is moving much faster as a result of mentorship and masterminds and being involved in that. And don't be afraid to pay for that, because they will take your business farther faster than if you're trying to do it all yourself. You might get someplace faster if you do it all yourself, but it won't be very good, and you're guaranteed to fail if you try to play that game. And so building a great team around you and building a great team of mentors and people who are supportive of you and your business is a big thing. I do want to take a minute, because when we talked in our first conversation, you know, somebody asked me not long ago to kind of describe my client base, and I hadn't really thought about it. And it wasn't that I actually marketed it this way, but 100% of my clients are minority women-owned businesses. And that I just kind of sat back and I went, oh, geez. And then I was like, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense given the work that I do, and that I'm really working to try to level the playing field for people in their negotiation. And there can be kind of this, you know, for lack of a better term, kind of this weird or wonky kind of evaluation, and there's just all sorts of things that are just not equal or fair in a lot of ways. And I want to try to make things more fair, more equitable. And so that I just end up working with a lot of minority women-owned businesses. You, in our first conversation, you talked about how when you see people looking to get investment, that population of people often don't ask for enough. And you know, I've seen that. I see that in negotiation. I've kind of gotten on this kick lately because I hear a lot of people talking about gratitude, big names in the speaking industry who claim to be super motivational speakers, yet they use they use the word gratitude almost as yeah, you should just be grateful for the scraps that we're tossing you off the table, but the rest of it's all ours. And and sets up a situation where people become even more afraid of asking. And you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get that account if I ask them to renegotiate. I'm not going to get this if I ask them to do this. I won't get that raise. People tell me I'm too much, I'm not enough on this. How, in your experience, because you work with a lot of minority-owned businesses, how in your experience how do you see that part unfolding? how do we help minority women-owned businesses feel empowered to ask for more of what it is they want, not just what they need? Because your comment to me was that you see, especially women coming into need investment, and they don't even ask for what they need, let alone what they want. And when you're not asking for what you need, when you're going to an investor, you're not going to get that, because the investor knows, because they've looked at your business plan, that you're not even asking for enough to give your business a fighting chance to be
Sure.
one of those 10%. Can you
Sure.
talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's a really important conversation.
Well, one of the things that I should start by saying is that obviously, we're going through, particularly in the African American community, we are going through a very pivotal time, right? This is just as pivotal for us as, let's say, this now in the new millennium, right? As the civil rights movement was for us in the 1960s. So we're sort of realizing that we have the ability to sort of take control of our economic outcomes, right? And we're realizing the disadvantages that we have, and we're taking action and moving forward. Now, I know that, and this is something that I've said many, many times, that women or women of color, regardless of what ethnicity that may be, are the future of that movement, right? They tend to do better in school. They tend to achieve higher academic achievement. They tend to have higher positions in companies, and they tend to have higher salaries, right? But they're also the center of the family. They're the center of the community, right? And at that center, that's where the economic need is the most acute. So you have that natural sort of conglomeration of things that will bring an entrepreneur, up from, out of the ether and sort of coalesce into what's needed for the community, right? So the first thing that I would say women of color have to know is that they are the future. And if they don't do it, then it might not get done, right? Now that you can look at that as a responsibility, you can look at that as a challenge. You can look at that as an opportunity. I tend to look at that as an opportunity because I'm an entrepreneur, right? So that's the first thing, right? There are lots of resources and people out there to help. The second thing that we have to understand about that is programming, right? And the programming is subtle. I can go into sort of a diatribe on sort of sociology and how we're all socialized. But effectively what happens is there's something that says you need a man, you need a man, you need a man, you need a man. The solution is to couple yourself with someone else. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong in all aspects, but what it does is it puts women in a position so that when they're coming into the business ecosystem, right, they're saying, okay, I've got to sort of find that thing that will complete me, right? Now, when you go and you're talking to investors, typically they're going to be men. Most of the time, they're going to be white men. The reason for that is because that's where all the money is, right? I mean, let's face it. The rest of us simply have a disadvantage as that is concerned. So you take that sort of programming and then you couple that with the visual of everybody who I'm talking to that has opportunity or has capital is a man, then you get into, okay, let me make sure that I'm doing the right thing and I'm showing that this person that I'm doing the right thing with their money. Right. Then it becomes sort of, okay, if I go in and I show them that I'm not asking for too much and that I can do this with this much, then great. They're going to think that I'm being responsible. They're going to think that I'm being the kind of business owner that they want to invest in. They'll have more trust and more faith in me, and this will be a great relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's that, and that this the beginning of that is sort of programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of have to break out of that. And the reason why is that when I've watched over the years, I've watched women go into negotiations, and this is also factual when it comes to negotiating for salary, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about entrepreneurs, so we're negotiating for capital and opportunities, but I've watched women go into these kinds of negotiations, and I've watched men go into these kinds of negotiations. Typically what happens is the women will ask, they'll go in saying, well, if I can just prove to them that I can take this little bit and make a lot with it, then that will create the trust that's needed, and we'll have a good relationship. Men come in saying, you know what, I've got to do this. I want 2 times more. They always ask for more. They always ask for more than they need, right? They say, I'm going to aim high, and then if I don't get that, then I'll back up a little bit, right? And that's the win for me. But they're not looking at this as I need to build trust with this person. I want them to. No, they're looking at this guy has what I need. This is what I need, and I'm the captain of my ship, right? So that's sort of the the macho kind of point of view. Okay, so looking at it from following this line and understanding that coming in this programming, you've got to break through the programming, right? Now I'm going to go back to business planning, because it's the business planning that's going to help you to understand those numbers. It's going to help you to understand exactly what you need, right? Because you're going to become the subject matter expert in your business. It's the business plan that will tell you exactly what you need. And you've got to be prepared to go in and ask for a little bit more, contingency, right? 20% more. You got to go in and be able to ask for more, but you also have to be self-reflective to understand that you've been programmed. You've been programmed to work with less. You've been programmed to accept less. You've been programmed, and we're really good at that. My great grandmother used to say, we make a way out of no way. Right? We make a way out of no way. And she would talk to me about times when there was nothing. They had, they literally had, nothing to eat. They had flour and molasses. She would tell me these stories how they would eat flour and molasses for days and weeks and months on end, right? So we're beyond those days, but at the same time, that programming still exists.
Right. Yeah.
Right. We tend to make less money doing the same job, right? We have to make a way out of no way. We tend to not get the same opportunities in terms of promotions and those other things, right? We tend to be, in fact, treated differently in society, right? Where we've got to sort of navigate a different set of rules. So we're used to kind of making a way out of no way. So you have to be self-reflective and understanding that as you're moving forward in the business world, you don't always have to make a no way out of no way. And just because this person doesn't believe in you, there's another person out there that might, right? And that might not be the right money for you. If that makes sense, right? You got the interview. You were able to get in. You're sitting in front of this VC or this investor, but that's not the only investor out there. There are plenty of people out there that do that, right? I do that. There's many people who invest in other people. And being an investor, all that means is your job is to take money and make money with money, as opposed to selling pizza or selling TVs. Right? You're putting your money out there, and it's the money that's doing the work. Right. So there's no magic sauce or anything like that. It's instead of me going out and using this to work, I'm going to use my dollars. That's it. Right. So there's the understanding that you've got to understand that there's programming there that you have to look past. You have to recognize that it's there. You have to look past it. You have to look for the opportunities, as they present themselves, you have to
Mhm.
look for those opportunities. You can't be afraid of those opportunities. Don't shy away thinking, well, no, that might be a little bit too big, and maybe I
Mhm.
need to go back and get an MBA. Maybe I need to go do this. No way. Look at the Forbes list. Look at the people at the top of that. Most of the people at the top of that they don't have MBAs at
Yep,
all.
that's correct.
They found an opportunity. They found a need and they filled that need. They saw a problem and they solved that problem, right? That's what they did. And they just happened to actually make it. Is the deck stacked? Yes. There's a reason if you look at all the guys that run the big tech companies, right? They all look
Mhm.
the same.
Mhm.
Yeah, the deck is stacked, but it doesn't mean you can't be successful. Doesn't mean that
Absolutely.
you can't place as well, right?
Right.
It doesn't. It doesn't. So you've got to understand and be self-reflective. You have to have the confidence in yourself. You have to understand your value and your worth. You have to understand the opportunity that you're being handed right now. As a woman, you are the future of the economic outlook for your community, right? You're the center of the family, you're the center of the community, but you're also the future of the economic outlook. So it's that, I mean, that's sort of how I approach it.
Mm.
I have a number of mentees and clients that are women of color, and it's what I find when I introduce those ideas, that there's a transformation that occurs. And
Mhm.
it's not that you have to go out and become, the devil wears Prada. You don't have to be that person, right? But you do have to understand and know your value, and understand and know that when you're approaching any situation, you're just as good as everybody else, whether they're a man, whether they're of color or not, right?
Mhm.
You're just as good as everybody else, because at the end of the day, it's the value of the asset, not just the value of the asset, but the way we keep score is with dollars, right? The
Mhm.
dollars tell, the market says to you, when you have those dollars, that's the market saying you've done well.
Right.
You did it, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's what matters the most. And in the end, it's whatever shortcoming you may have, if you stick to it, and again, you're self-reflective, and you understand your value, and you know the value of your asset, and you go through the planning process, and you seek help, you look for people like Christine who help in negotiation, you look for LVs in the world, right? You can do it. You
Mhm.
can do it. There's nothing that can't keep you back. Nothing.
I agree 100%. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And I think that, what you do, LV, in terms of helping people build business plans and, in negotiation, knowing your numbers is one of the most important, most critical things that you can do to be successful at the negotiation table. And what you do to help people understand what their vision is, put numbers to that vision, and give them the backdrop and the information that they need to build confidence. Because when you have a really solid business plan, it immediately builds confidence for you. You know that plan inside and out. You can talk about it. People can throw things at it and poke holes in it, and you know it, you understand it. And that's a game changer. And so I'm really excited about the new program that you're launching starting on the
Yeah.
17th of December. So it'll be launched when we air the episode. How can people find you? How can people get involved in the program? And yeah, just let the audience know.
Yeah.
We'll
So
put it
so
in the
that,
show
that's a
notes too.
That's great. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about that, because it's important. I realized at one point that this was sort of my calling, right? And not only being an entrepreneur, that's sort of who I am. It's not, there's no way that I'm going to be able to separate that from who I am as a person, and what I do. Um, but I consider it to be my moral obligation to give back and help others, right?
Mm.
Particularly others of color, right? I think it's very, very important for me to do that. And it doesn't mean that I have to diminish anybody else to feel that way, right? I think it's important, and it's important not just to me as a person, to my community at large, to the area that I live in, but also to this country, right? As Americans, we have a responsibility, if we've been afforded good fortune, to give back. And that doesn't just mean showing up at the gala and wearing a tuxedo and writing a check, right? Sometimes you got to go out and you got to talk to people. So for me, it's a moral obligation. So you can find more about me at cambridgeargillite.com, which is my website. We have a Facebook page as well. Sort of social media is there. Thanks to Farhana Cannon, who is an amazing digital strategist and has been working with us and sort of taken our business to the next level, as you know, Christine. And you can also find me I work as a mentor for a group, an organization called E4All, that focuses on working in communities of color in gateway cities, immigrant communities and communities of color. So you can find me there as well. I work as a mentor, and I sit on the board of one of the programs going in the South Coast. So you can find me there. I encourage you to seek out, if you're looking to start a business, seek out people like me, people like Christine, seek out programs like E4All, right? Because they can help guide you through the process. They can help guide you through the process and provide that mentorship and those initial resources that will get you off to a great start. Now, are they going to make your business a success? No, that's going to be up to you. What you're doing by going to E4All, what you're doing by coming to somebody like me, or coming to somebody like Christine, or coming to somebody like Farhana, is you're going to be setting yourself up for the best possible outcome. You're going to be reducing that 90% chance to fail down to 60% or 50%, right? And then the rest is going to be up to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, LV. I really appreciated you being with us today. This has been fantastic. I loved it. To everyone, to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Do you guys I love doing this show. It's just so much fun for me. And I hope that you guys are learning a lot on it. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. And until next time, have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Christine.
everyone.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Venn Zone with Christine McKay. We invite you to visit our website at www.venn.zone to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Empower the negotiator in you and successfully level the playing field. Join us again next time here on In the Venn Zone.